Good morning. Am I live? Yay! Oh my gosh, it is Friday. As Winnie would say, it's Friday. Hey, there we go. There we go. I am so happy to be back in my seat. Yesterday, I was only here for a second because I don't know why, but sometimes I have a tendency to underestimate my time. You know, I was going to a all-day workshop called Data Days downtown at the Cleveland Library. And when I looked at the schedule of events, it said that the first kind of session started at 9 a.m. I know that there was a thing that said things started at 8 a.m., but I was shooting for the 9 a.m. And I so then when I looked at it again, what I realized that the registration and breakfast was from 8 to 9. And I was leaving out and catching the bus down there, no less, because because I was like, I'm not paying for parking. I'm not paying all that money for parking. So I decided to catch the RTA. So I caught the RTA down. What an adventure. Good morning, Sandra. Happy Friday. What an adventure to catch the bus downtown. I remembered why, I used to tell people that when I was riding the bus, it was no worries about keeping your weight in check. And they said, like, oh, because you don't get to drive through fast food restaurants. And I'm like, I don't drive through fast food restaurants. No, it's because I got to run for the bus. And which is what I did yesterday. It's like a sprint kind of walk to the bus, because there was a part of me I couldn't get a grip on how many minutes I had. I know that it reaches one stop at a particular time. So I kind of sprinted to the bus and went down there. I got there, right at about 10 minutes till, got me some stuff to stuff in my mouth because the fruit was just amazing. And it was a really interesting, good day. Now, I will say that I do not know a lot about when they said data days. I was like, what does that mean, right? When you think about that. And so it's a lot of, they call themselves data wonks, I think, statistical people who just love watching the numbers, love gathering numbers and evaluating numbers, to look at the evaluations and see what's there and what's not. And if not, why not? And so there was so many things that they pointed out that were, on its face, it can be a racist. I would just put it like that. So whether you are talking about data in the court systems or data in the community or data as it relates to health outcomes, as it relates to any number of things, services, city services, the disparities within communities, credit, housing, data, right? And so one of the things that what I realized is that we don't take advantage of the data that is out there. You know, who's collecting the data and for what purposes? And if you are collecting data and warehousing data, what can that be then used for? So it was a fascinating day. There was a lot of things that I did not or was kind of unaware of. And it, I don't know that it has made me want to, delve deeper into data, but to recognize that it is out there to be used, that somebody is collecting it for some purpose. And if you use it correctly, it can, whether you're applying for grants or fighting the system, all of that information is out there and available. So it was an interesting day. It was an interesting day. And I put in for, a vegan meal, and I got a vegan meal, and they were having a reception afterwards, but it just seemed too cumbersome to for me to attend that. And I was fortunate that one of my brothers was still at City Hall and could just kind of swing by and swoop me real quick, which was just fabulous. So I didn't have to catch the bus back. But it was a good day. It was a really good day. Met some really interesting people. So I just think that I'm so glad that I had the opportunity, and it's an annual event, so I would consider going back to it again just to find out more and to see some of these fascinating people that I might not otherwise encounter. I did not know that there was a poverty center at Case Western Reserve. There was quite a few departments from Case Western that were represented there, and just to see that there are people that are really paying attention and trying to shake some things loose is heartening, and it's good. So that's my thing for Data Days, and I'm just grateful. I was grateful for the opportunity. So now, as I shift gears, it is Friday, and I know I have been trying my best to get the book that we are on. It didn't start with you, finished and closed out. And it was amazing too, because I was able to even talk about that kind of information, because one of the things that, data tries to capture people in particular situations and to understand it, to make sense of things. And so if you're not factoring in certain things as part of the data, then you could miss it. And so I just think that, yeah, I found out some fascinating stuff. So so getting back into wait a minute, let me go off on another one of my tangents too. A friend of mine's asked me a question about another friend, and the question went to, so you're going to give her another chance, huh? That was what the question was. Oh, so you're going to give her another chance. And I thought, absolutely, right? Absolutely. When how do I say this? Because I don't like to reduce everything down to religious or spiritual imperatives. I am not the one to want to beat anyone over the head with scriptural references and all of that stuff. That I don't think is the motivation behind the things that I do. When you think about the motivations behind what you do, I hope that you consider, you actually sit in the consideration of being generous, right? If I was being generous, if I was looking beyond what appears to be on the surface, how would I respond? So when you talk about second chances or third chances, Jesus said that you should forgive 7 times 70. And what does that mean? Does it mean to wipe the slate clean? Does it mean to forget? Or does it mean to release the separation that is caused by the judgment? And so when you think about that for your life and who you are including and excluding from your life, consider that it may be that um, part of the work to do is to deal with our own ego issues, deal with our own stuff, instead of always trying to police everybody else and their stuff. So when she said, so you're going to give her another chance, I was like, yeah, absolutely. Right. But then the question becomes, at what? I love to let people off the hook for my ideas, my thoughts, my rightness, all of that stuff. Let them off the hook for that. That does not mean that I want to go hang out and kick it. That doesn't mean that I'm going to go and do a whole bunch of, whatever. It doesn't necessarily mean that, because what I know is, so say for instance, I have felt scorched. I use that word. I have felt scorched by people. And in that, I am okay. I can let that go. I can forgive it. Does that now mean that who was it that said, Maya Angelou, however you say it, Angelo, she said that when people show you who they are, believe them the first time, right? You don't have to circle back on it. You don't have to keep, but that's cool. I'm just saying, it's cool. It's really all right. But that doesn't mean that I need to now, like, try to act like nothing has ever happened when I've already seen the whole card, right? So absolutely let people off the hook and make decisions about how you want to proceed going forward. Jesus would say, if somebody slaps you on the cheek, turn and offer them the other as well. Well, I get that, right? If a man asks you to carry his load 1 mile, carry it 2, right? I get that. I get that. If you're there, go for it. I mean, if you are there, go forward. One of the things that I know is that when I have to take into consideration too, that what I thought may not be. Sometimes we perceive an offense when there is none. When people are just doing what they do and the best that they can do. We get offended, but it doesn't mean that they meant it offensively. So consider what it is that you think, and know yourself to the extent of knowing that, you know what, this is me all over again. As a matter of fact, this is the place where I normally get stuck. And if that's the case where you know that this is you all over again, it's a place at which you normally get stuck. Compensate for that distortion. And I love that idea. It was one that I got from Star Trek. There was an episode where Jean-Luc and they were seeing things incorrectly, or there was something that was precluding them from seeing what it was that they thought they should see. So say, for instance, my eyeglasses, these things compensate for the distortion. I can see things on my screen, but when I put this up here, it's kind of like having 3D lenses. When I put them up here and then I look again, it becomes clear. There is a compensation made through the prescription, the lens that is here, so that I can then see things more clearly. And so sometimes what happens in our lives is that we've had some type of trauma that has blurred our vision. It's caused us to see everything. When you look around you, everything looks like a monster, right? Everything looks like it's out to get you. You know, it's got its teeth and its fangs. But then when you put on your glasses, you see that it was not that at all, that you just needed to compensate for the distortion. So a corrective lens is what is required sometimes so that we can see things clearly. And I don't know, you know, who else that is for, but if you have a habit or a tendency to get stuck in certain places, if you have and I'll give you another example. I had a girlfriend, and I've told you about her several times. I have a girlfriend. I've told you and mentioned her several times to you guys. She always believes that every guy that she dates is going to cheat. And so no matter what, she's always like, that is a ticker tape that plays in her mind. Well, that's a distortion that's based on an incident that didn't even happen to her, a distortion that took place in her parents' relationship that caused a divorce and then caused her to grow up without her father that she was, you know, she adored. It caused her to grow up without him in the house. And so because that happened in her family with her grandmother, then her mother, she assumes that every guy she meets is going to do the same thing to her. It's a distortion. And so if you know that you already have a distortion, you compensate for it by saying, this is the point at which this ghost comes into the room. Now I can either, you know, believe this is, and here's the thing, because it repeats over and over again. At every relationship, in every instance, she's seeing the same thing. And she's justifying it because she sees it, believing that it is real and that it is true. Well, wonder if, you know, maybe she recognizes that this is something that is mine, right? And it may not have started with me, but now that it is mine, I know that I need to compensate every time this comes up because I cannot see clearly. So what do I need to do? I need to put on some type of filter that helps me look again, to reevaluate, to think maybe I can give this the benefit of the doubt. Maybe it's not what I think. And so, you know, it happens in any number of ways. It doesn't necessarily have to be, you're welcome, Sandra. It doesn't necessarily have to be in that particular way. I got another friend who believes that people are inherently evil, right? That they have things that they come to the table with, and you know that everybody has got an agenda, everybody is this, everybody is that. And so he moves through the world as if people are untrustworthy, as if people are out to get him or to hurt him or to take something from him. That's how he moves through the world. And so at a certain point, you want to say, dude, here, look through these glasses, right? Because there is a distortion that is taking place. And if you don't compensate for the distortion, because if you can be good, if you can see this in yourself, right? There's that Bible story. I think when they were destroying Lot and his wife, and he was like, if I can find, like, God wanted to destroy that city, or that whatever, that village or whatever it was. God wanted to destroy it because he said everybody there is corrupt. Everybody there is out of control. Everybody there. And he was like, if I can find just one, if I could find, one or two, would that stop you? Right? Would it stop you from raining down, fire on these people? If I could just find one. And so when you are able to just find one who does not fit inside of the mold that you have created, the idea that you have created, it's like, if I can find an exception to the rule, then I must throw out the rule because it's no longer a rule. If I can find that there is one guy out there that's not doing what I thought, or one woman that is not the way you believed, if you can find an exception, that means that it's not necessarily true. It may be true in some instances, but not across the board. And so it becomes the work that we have to do. What's the distortion? What caused the distortion, right? And it didn't start with you. It gives us a framework for looking at the distortion that we perceive. And so if now, like, if we go with the images or the ideas, if now I've got a perception that, everybody, if I've got the perception, like my one friend does, that everybody is inherently evil and that people don't mean you well, and all of these other, fatalistic things that he has going on, he can ask himself, where did that idea come from, right? Is it mine, or is it someone else's? And that's the excavation work to do, right? If it's somebody else's, then maybe I can understand where that thought came from. My girlfriend, if she perceives all guys cheat, that all men are cheaters, and that's her experience. I'm not, because I know that is not true, right? I know it's not true. But that is what her perception is, and that's how she moves through the world. Now, let's back up. Where did that idea come from? Is it because she's actually had someone cheat on her? And sometimes that answer is no, right? Sometimes we could say, I actually never experienced that. I got I could tell y'all stories about all of this. I got examples of stuff. But say, for instance, you've never actually caught anybody, or it's never been proven to be true. Sometimes you have to back up and say, where did this idea come from? Oh, I remember my mom and dad. And then you could say, oh, and my grandmother and her husband. Oh, and where those instances that have been sealed on your mind, on your brain, to the degree to which it becomes how you see the world. And so just put on your the whatever it is that needs to correct this, right? Put on your glasses so that you can, and you only do this when you know that there is something askew. Like, this is how I go through the world. This is how I interact. This is how I relate. Let me put on glasses. Somebody has told me to take off my rose-colored glasses, right? Okay. if it works, and if it doesn't work, just figure it out, right? Just recognize that the origin of the fear might not be them. It might just be you. It might be me, right? The origin of that uneasiness, it might be me. And that's so good because what it does is it, if you can imagine that it frees you up, right? If you can imagine that it changes your energy. When I get teased about using that word, it changes you when you open up. So say, for instance, if, you know, you could see somebody and there is a tightness to them, right? I'm tight and I'm constricted and I'm angry and I'm all of these things. And then all of a sudden, when you start to realize that it might not be out there, but in here, then all of a sudden you start to relax and it's like, oh, the stress goes out of your face and out of your being, and the real beautiful you can come through, because now now you are the person that people really want to be around. And that's juicy fabulous, right? I mean, it's good when you can see that in yourself. So so let me just, as I'm doing this, I want to retrace my steps a little bit. Suppress, yeah. I want to retrace the steps a little bit. So when we first started reading this particular book, one of the things that Mark Wolin said to us is to figure out what your deepest fears are, right? Or, if you think about what's the worst possible thing that could happen to you, there is this wanting to when you have a garden, I love the gardening analogies. I love nature analogies, as you know. When you have a garden, there is this thing that I used to see older people do. Now I put a garden out, and I do tend to my stuff because I don't want weeds to come in there and choke everything out. I don't want things that are coming in where I didn't plant them, because if I got a tomato plant that decides it wants to grow right next to my collards, it's something is not going to be able to come into its full fruition because they're fighting over resources and the sun. And so, you got two things that are going to be contorted or whatever it is. And so you go out, and a lot of times you're either weeding or you're trying to loosen up the soil around something. You just work the soil around it to kind of cultivate its roots and to get it stimulated so that it grows more and grows better. Well, sometimes what we have to also do in our mind is to dig around in there and see what it is that is at issue. Sometimes we are very unconscious about the things that we think. We never question it. But the thing is to look at our core complaint. What is your deepest fear? What do you complain about? What is it that and so when we started this book, he asked us to describe our parents. And he asked you for a description of your mother, a description of your father, how you perceive their interactions together, how you perceive them with you. And in that, we are looking for core complaints. We are looking for language. We are looking for something that might describe what we think about our parents. So if I said that my mother was emotionally detached, I might look at myself to see if I too am emotionally detached. But it's writing that down and then asking myself the same question about my father, to really look at my relationships and see where this detachment is. um, Through doing this work, I was able to recall that my mother constantly talked about her mother leaving her to go to the city and work and left her behind. Then to know that there is something that, that abandonment issue would then cause my mother to be distant with me. We talk about this as part of enslavement, this snatching away children from their parents so that they don't pass along traditions or to really just um exert power of, this idea that you are owned, you are a possession, and that nobody cares about your feelings. There were so many things that happened as a result of that. And that snatching away is something that people still deal with generation after generation. And so this, what it does is it causes us, it's like rooting around at the bottom of a plant. It loosens up the soil so that we might remember what it is that is our core complaint. So you know so we're looking for particular words that have an emotional charge, and whatever those words might be. So it this is unlocking some of the emotional stuff that we put in around this. So words that describe your deepest fear. When you think about what your deepest fear is, what words do you use? This again is getting at your core language. What words do you use? So if it's, whatever it is that comes up, I had made a list of mine before. Sometimes it seems like one of the things that he says in here is that it'll seem like it's out of context as well. Like, remember the woman who, the guy who thought he was going to freeze to death, and he would could be someplace warm, and in his mind, he was going to freeze to death. I got a friend that has a thing about heat. Then there was the woman who might be incinerated, or the kid that kept beating himself over the head. Sometimes these things seem out of place. And it could go back to something that might have happened as a result of whatever situation. So if somebody is in the Holocaust and their loved ones were incinerated, burned to death, or gassed or whatever, those words might come up, but you not understand or not be able to attach that to them and understand why. So you're looking at core language, core complaints, so that it takes you closer into figuring out what it is that is playing in your background. So unresolved trauma that our family members have dealt with could impact who we are today. Not just this idea of cheating, but sometimes it goes beyond that. Sometimes if somebody has been killed in a very heinous way. Can you imagine that there are people who, like the Sowell's victims, Anthony Sowell's victims, what they might have gone through. If you think about, I mean, any number of things, it could just, all of those things could be impactful and continue to play out. So it's looking for words, looking for greatest fears, all of those things to get closer to your core language. And then once we find out what our core language is, there is this idea of, or our core fears, there's this idea about, he shared about sensing the flow. How are you connected to them? What might it be that you are taking from somebody else and allowing it to play? It be the soundtrack of your life, even if you don't realize that it's the soundtrack of your life, right? Um, could I be playing out my mother's stuff or my grandmother's stuff or my great grandmother's stuff? What is that? Am I bringing that to the moment? And so it is those unconscious themes that need to be interrupted in our life, right? Um, did you merge yourself with somebody? Did you merge your energy with somebody else and their issues, right? Um, so and I thought that this was really an interesting thing because you know, I think that at times we have a tendency to identify with, even if we don't necessarily say it or don't necessarily bring it to fruition, or are conscious about it. I talk often about the woman who lived next door to me when I was younger, who was the first time I had seen somebody who was or appeared to be single by choice, and she was living her best life. I mean, she had a house of her own that was right next door to our family house. So it was not a small house. It was actually a very nice house. She had a nice house, a nice car. She had a social life with other women that were her peers or her equals. She threw parties. I mean, it was like I went from seeing what I grew up seeing was a lot of times the Leave It to Beaver family was the ideal back then. You got a happy homemaker wife and a husband that goes off to work. And so most of my childhood, my mother was at home. Even though she babysat for other people, she was at home. She babysat for a lot of women that were single and had to go out and work. And yeah, they had to go out and work, and so they had their own stuff. But now here I was finally seeing a woman that was onto herself, so to speak. She didn't have any children. She had, like I said, a house, a car. She seemed to be living her best life, right? She had women groups. I don't know, we called them the hens, right? She would have hen parties. She would do stuff. And for the first time, I was seeing something that was a possibility, right? And so we don't know how sometimes, even if it's not a person who is in your family, but proximate to, then sometimes there is this merging with that experience, and not from a space of victimhood, right? Not from a space of something, she was like she was a jilted woman or something that, thrown away or tossed to the side. No, she appeared to be able to stand on her own two big feet, all her own, in spite of whatever somebody else's judgments about her might have been. And so there was a identification that could be made, instead of always thinking that our lives are in reference to somebody else. Women sometimes take on the referential role, as if we are somehow, if we are by ourselves, then somehow, some way we have been wronged, or something wrong has gone, something has gone wrong. But when you realize that it is possible that this is a choice rather than a circumstance, it can also be a choice too. And that's a beautiful thing, to represent that, to represent that narrative, instead of always looking as if we are somehow not full when we show up in these kinds of arenas. So so as I went through this, it was really interesting, because I was able to really do the Columbo investigative work, to kind of sit back and contemplate or think about the things that have impacted me and how I see the world. And so I just being able to be aware is an amazing thing. That awareness that comes up. I watch a lot of sometimes I'm watching YouTube videos, or I read books, I go through different things, and I hear the narratives that others present. And a lot of times they are so anesthetized. They don't really speak to the experience that a person is having, but rather they talk about information that they've gathered. Like, I could look at Mark Wolin's book and say, oh gosh, he has gotten so many case studies that that he's talking about, people who have gone through different things that he talks about. And that's beautiful and wonderful. But now, how do we apply it to our lives? That's where the rubber meets the road, right? To really look at what has had an impact on you. And so if this your parents' relationship or lack thereof, it is, and I mean, sometimes we can have our parents' relationships and we see it, but really not see it, because what we're seeing is the surface part that we desire to see or to acknowledge. And it may not be the truth. Like, for example, some people have never seen their parents have a disagreement or an argument. Is that because they never have had one? Or is it because they wanted to insulate or to not have their children see that? So if you never see your parents argue or have a disagreement, you never see this working out. You never see where, okay, I could vehemently disagree with you. I could be angry at you and still be in relationship with you. And so it's one of those things, to be able to see conflict and confusion happen, and then the coming together is a powerful thing. It doesn't always have to be ugly, and it doesn't necessarily mean that people go and they separate, or it provides, to me, it would seem, it provides a degree of security in children, when they see that you can kiss and make up, that things are not cut and dry, or either or. It sees that there is a yes, we've been through this. Yes, we fought. Yes, and now we find a semblance of peace. And sometimes it is just that we make peace. It is not that, I went out and bought a car and didn't tell my husband or my wife that I was buying this car. They're upset. They're not only upset, they're pissed about it because I've now gone and made a decision that impacts the family, but I didn't include them. And so it's not as if she went and returned the car. It's not that she took it back. It's that now we're going to have this, knock down, drag out argument about it. And everybody brings their stuff to the table, talks about the violation, what's gone on, blah, blah, blah. And then there's some resolution. And that resolution doesn't necessarily mean that now you go and you take the car back. The resolution means that, we've come to an understanding, or we've gotten to a place of peace, or something else. But it doesn't necessarily mean that now we split up. And there is this insecurity that our children feel every time an argument comes up, because the narrative that they've been given, even on television, is that when there's fighting going on all the time, somebody ends up divorcing or leaving the house, or the family changing in some type of way. You guys, this is not always the case. Sometimes it is this that people can reconcile and have reconciliation, and we don't talk about that enough. That's one of the things that we need to say. Yeah, we fall down, but we get up. That's what part of the message is that yes, we can vehemently disagree with one another. We can get angry with one another, but that does not mean the end of a relationship. It means that sometimes what we have to do is to look beyond the present, what's presenting itself, and see how to see clearly to what it is that you want to experience. I don't know that, it would seem as if we hold that as a value, that we throw situations away and not people, right? That the people that we love, the friendships that we have, they have value. And sometimes it does take some tweaking. Sometimes it does take some, this is where I, where I'm having an issue. Now let's look at this and let's see how we can work it out. I think that is a powerful way to be. It doesn't have to be like, and I don't know, sometimes in our relationships, we want it to be like the image that we've learned, that we have experienced and we think is right. Can you imagine? I remember one time Alan was telling me about his grandparents, and he talked about this idea that at a certain point they divorced, and he goes his way, she goes hers. But then one of the things that they found out is that they still really loved each other. And so it became that, like a lot of married people, for whatever reason that you may split, now all of a sudden you see that this person was somebody that you truly love. And so then to hold that to, now they're having conversations on the phone every day. And when he started talking about them, he was like, at a certain point, they just decided we can't live together, but we want to live proximate to one another. So they moved next door to each other. And it could be one of those things. We don't have to sleep under the same roof or in the same bed or anything like that. Let's figure out how to manage this for us. When somebody tries to tell you that you need to live in the same house and sleep in the same room and do it this way and do it that way, you set yourself up for failure. You figure out what it is that works for you. If it's having a space that is all your own, because I think I would just go crazy if I had to, if I couldn't have my own space. It would, even if it's just a bedroom, someplace that you can go, you can close the door and you can have your own solace and peace of mind. Sometimes that is what it takes in order for two people to be happy. But if you were always, I could just imagine the stress I would feel if I had to do it the way that my parents did it or the way that society says that it's supposed to be done. Know yourself. Know thyself. And as Shakespeare would say, when you know yourself, you cannot be untrue to any man. It's like it's night follows day. You cannot be untrue to any man. If you know that you need your own space, if you know that that there is something, the other day I was talking to a friend I was listening to something, and this person on the thing, I constantly talk about my neighbor. He would rather fish than do anything in the world. He goes fishing like it's like some people do church, right? It is his spot. It is his sweet point to do. When stuff happens to him, when his mother died, he left the house and he went fishing. Now, some people take fishing as I don't know how other people perceive it. But here's what I've learned. There is something amazing about being close to water. It's soothing and healing. There's something amazing about putting a line into the water and sitting there, sometimes in quiet reflection and sometimes in anticipation. But it is something that is necessary for him and his peace of mind. So this idea that, that's his way of, for me, it may be that I sit on a cushion, or that I may be in the house by myself, or I get to process. We all have to figure out what works for us and then do that. That's his way. You have yours, I hope. My friend Alan, he plays his instruments. He gets on his keyboards or he gets on his guitar and he gets lost for hours, literally. Figure out what yours is, what brings you peace, and then do that. And then when stuff comes up for your review, you can figure out what the distortion is because you've gone to your place, your happy place. All of us should have one. Go to your happy place and see what it does. All right, y'all. I don't know. I need some water. It's time for me to go. Thank you for being here. Sandra, thank you for your comments. I'm excited about the JFK event happening, not this weekend, but the following weekend. I'm excited about that. I'm excited at the opportunity to see folks. This is a good time. It's a good time. All is well. So I will see you. I got work to do. I'm so happy. I'm so grateful. So I will see you guys next time. I'll be here tomorrow, God willing. And you're off that weekend. Yay. Good. The 21st and the 22nd. Yeah. And there's a little event I get to go to tomorrow evening too, and just juicy good. All of it is juicy good. So yeah, so I'm gone, and I'll be here tomorrow and Sunday and all of that day. All right, I'll see you soon. Blessings to you. Bye.